And I want to welcome everybody on behalf of the Central Valley Progressive PAC. My name is Pam Whalen, and I'm the president of the Central Valley Progressive PAC. A lot of people say, what's a progressive, right? And it's very, very controversial this season. And I want to just kind of talk just a moment about what our mission statement is, which we are an organization to promote human and civil rights in the Central Valley, to be accomplished through education and action, and we will advocate and or lobby elected officials relative to concerns and values of the Central Valley. And those concerns include, but are not limited to, a living wage for our workers, clean air, public safety, affordable housing, adequate public transportation and bike paths, police accountability, improved public education, and health care for all. So I want to, at this point, introduce kind of what the process is going to be here today. We have 4 areas of that we're going to be asking questions of from Henry Perea, and those include homelessness issues, tenants' rights issues, planning and land use, and police accountability. So we're going to spend 15 minutes on each of those areas. We will also have an opportunity for folks to give us questions that they would like to ask. Okay, with no further ado, I'm going to ask Henry Perea to come up.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you all for taking time out of your Saturday to be here today to listen to me and ask me the questions that you have. And I respect your time, and I look forward to a really great discussion. I want to introduce my daughter, Annalisa, to my campaign team. And her partner, Alicia, in the back. Alicia is my campaign manager now. Raj has moved on to another position with the League of Cities. We miss her, but we are hitting the ground running, ready to go. This morning we had 10 walkers out. They're just coming in right now. We're getting good reports back. I was out walking up to about 45 minutes ago, so I went home, took a shower real quick. So this tan is all Fresno. It'll be darker as we go. But I had a great response today too. You know, my sense is voters are making up their minds now. You know, they're aware of the issues, they're aware of the candidates, and they're ready to go. So I'm feeling really good about this campaign. And just real quickly, I just want to ask my own little survey here. How many folks live in the tower? I'm trying to get a feel for where he's from. Big tower. How about Fig Garden, old Fig Garden? About old Fig Garden. Northeast Fresno? Northeast. Northwest Fresno? Clovis? All right, Southeast Fresno, last one. All right, okay, good. So we have the whole city here. That's great. Yeah, whatever questions we want to have, I'll be happy to answer it. And I think you're going to find out this, what a lot of you know about me already. I'm always going to tell you what I know and what I think. We may not agree, okay? But I think the main thing is that you always know where I stand, and you always know when I take a position. And when we go into the heat of the battle, whatever that might be, I'm never going to change. You know, I'm a pretty strong guy, pretty strong fighter. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. So know that, and I'm looking forward to the questions you have today.
Okay, we're going to start off with the land use questions.
I'm going to stand up. If anybody has trouble hearing me, raise your hand, and we'll do the microphone thing. Starting with the general plan. During this campaign, you've said you would complement the new general plan's focus on infill with single-family developments on the city's edges, even if it means building farther north of Copper River toward Bryant. How are you going to require developers to pay full freight for all the externalities that creates? The traffic, the air quality impacts, building infrastructure, providing services. That's question number 1. Question number 2, are you aware of the severe economic impacts on downtown and central city market rate housing when you create new housing on the fringes?
Okay. How much time do I get for this question?
1
25 words or less.
Yeah, I hope you brought your sleeping bag. It's going to be talking a lot today.
For the whole topic, there's 15 minutes.
Yeah. Okay, let me, just slight variation on your understanding of what I've said up to this point. Okay, first, let me say this. As a city councilman way back in the day, when I came on board in 1997, if you recall, Mayor Patterson at the time had a vision to create a general plan that would take the city of Fresno to the base of Frank. Okay, our council, when they came on board, there were 4 new council members, and we, in essence, changed that plan. And we stayed infill, we didn't go to Frank, and we, in essence, have the same general plan back in 1997 that you have today. Very, I think, very small variation to it. So with respect to an infill plan, that's what I have supported in the past, that's what I support today. And the plan that the city council has in place right now of a general plan with a design sphere of influence, I'm going to support that. And I'm not going to change that. You won't see me as a mayor going to the county of Fresno and saying, hey, I want to expand the sphere of influence in the city of Fresno, with only one exception possibly. And that would be the maintenance facility for the high-speed rail authority. Okay, if that comes into play, and if we're selected for that within the next year or so, there will be a discussion between the city and the county about where does that best fit, within the city of Fresno or in the county. Okay, so that's what I'll tell you. Beyond that, I have no interest in moving the lines of the city of Fresno. Now, having said that, now you know as a county supervisor, in the last probably 4 years, I have taken a pretty strong position on master planning the Frying Corridor. And a lot of folks I know, and folks in this room, are probably had some concern about that. But this is the way I see it. Right now, as a county supervisor, I can tell you there are probably several thousand building permits at some stage of the process for the Frying Corridor. Okay? And loads of, we all drive up there every once in a while, and you see the housing that's already being built. So my perspective a few years back is before one day we wake up, 100 years from now, well, not us, but somebody's going to wake up someday and take a look at the Frying Corridor and say, what the heck happened here? So from my perspective, I'm a master plan, I like planning. So my vision was, as the board chairman that year, is why don't we go into the Frying Corridor, do more of an overlay of the county general plan, and take a serious look at that corridor and take a look at where you absolutely can and cannot develop. I think it's pretty clear that the river bottom has to be protected at all costs, and I think nobody disagreed with that. So then at that point then is, okay, where would the opportunities be to build if we were going to build? And that was the purpose of that study, because I think we're fooling ourselves if we don't think someday something's going to happen there. So I'd rather plan it than let it happen by accident. And one of the things that I have worked on with the folks that are up there now, I'm a real light rail kind of guy, train kind of guy. And my thing was, as folks have been getting plans approved and developed, is that we identify the light rail corridors that will come off that corridor someday in Fresno. So, and the ones that have been up there have agreed to do that. So I think that's just the kind of long-term planning you have to do. But as I leave as a county supervisor, that'll be up to the county is what they're going to do with that Frying Corridor. If you're asking me as the mayor of Fresno, will I be aggressively pursuing bringing the Frying Corridor into the city of Fresno? The answer is no. But I guess that's just the way that will be. The other thing, the last thing I'll say about that, or this subject here, now we're talking about the current general plan and the boundaries of the sphere of influence. If there were 200 acres outside this front door, and somebody came in and said they want to build whatever, as long as it met the plans and the criteria, and they went through the processes to build, I would support it. I mean, we have to. I think that's the way it is. That's why you have a general plan. That's why you have a sphere of influence. That's why you build according to what your general plans require. So I would have no problem in any corner of this city within the sphere of influence. If somebody wants to develop and build in it, I'll be supportive of it as long as they live by the rules. I think the only exception or addition I would make to that is I think we have to create more of a pay-as-you-go process with future development. Okay, like a brand new car, you're not replacing lights, batteries, or tires for 2 or 3 years. It's pretty maintenance free. But after 3, 4, or 5, then you start replacing those kind of things. Housing is no different. Yes, it pays its way at the front end, and people argue both sides of that, but it's the owner who's paying for that, right? Well, I think going forward, when you have developments, I think you have to have some type of benefit assessment district set up so that people are paying into it to pay their way as things start breaking, whether it's a street light, the road needs repair, et cetera. So I don't have a problem with that. You know, if it's within your boundaries and it's within the rules that we're playing by, then we play by the rules.
So the second part of the question, I asked you a big question.
Yeah, you did.
So the second part of the question is, what are the mechanisms that you, as mayor, you've talked about assessment districts. What are the other mechanisms that you would impose for fringe development, picking up the real problems that it creates for the rest of the, actually, let me withdraw that part of the question. You sort of, there's a more important one.
You sound like a lawyer.
And that is that, I can't help myself. So the other question I really wanted to get to was, there are big economic impacts on downtown and central city market rate housing when you build, and it's one of the problems we're going to have in Madera, all the sprawl in Madera. So how is it that you intend to protect the value of central city real estate if there's building on the fringes?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a pretty complex question. I think there's a lot of things that you do to protect the value. And I'm going to approach it from a lot of different angles, and then I'd love to debate. I'll stay here as long as you want tonight, because I don't have anything to do after this. You know, first let me say this. Having been on the city council and the board of supervisors and been involved in a lot of the Urban Land Institute, and I'm real into planning on different levels. We all know that we have something called local control. And everybody, I think for the most part, supports that. And we know that when it comes to land use, is that every jurisdiction has jurisdiction over what they do with respect to land use. That's why you have what's happening in Madera. That's why you have the growth in Clovis. So I need to tell you. That's why I asked my poll of where you all lived. Because I think you all understand that you're going to live where you want to live. You know, that's your choice. What our job is, that I believe, as elected officials working with you, is how do we work together to, regardless of which corner of this community you live in, is healthy. You know, it's a two-way street. It's a two-way responsibility. You know, what is it that government can do, working with each other, within themselves and with you, to keep our neighborhoods healthy? There's a lot of economics, a lot of things tied to it. What I know is this: as long as we have local control, there is no way that we are going to stop Madera or Clovis or anybody else from developing unless one day the state of California comes in and does an overlay onto, in this case, say the Central Valley, and say this is where you're going to grow and this is where you're not going to grow. I don't see that happening, because I know we've had those discussions. It's just too much of a political hot potato. I know the state right now, through other types of legislation, while they're trying to impose incentives or disincentives for development, and that's fine. We'll live with that. But what I think is, when we have a general plan that we know that is in play, and we work within that plan, then when I come back to how do I keep this area healthy? You know, I live in the Fresno area. How do I keep my neighborhood healthy? I think we do it two ways. One is just personal responsibility. As neighbors, we have to be responsible to each other to make sure that our neighborhoods are solid. Okay, as a city, I think what I have to figure out is, where do I find the resources to pay for that street light, to pay for that street that needs repair, and all the other things that you need in an urban core to keep it vibrant? I mean, that's the $1 million question. I think if anybody had the absolute answer, they'd be president or something. But I think it's this. I think part of our strategy is going to be economic development. You know, we have to diversify the economic base of this community so that, one, people are working, but then two, as government, that then generates the resources that we need as a city to rebuild our neighborhoods. You know, I don't know any other way to rebuild our cities than to have a healthy economy that brings in the revenue base that's going to allow us to rebuild. That's just the way it works. If you're asking me if there's other monies from around, you know, the city or from the business community that we would want to ask to help pay for developments or city improvements, you know, I've been in the business long enough to know it hasn't happened. It's not there, and it's probably not going to happen. So I think what we have to rely on is, how do we, working together, take responsibility for our neighborhoods and keep them vibrant, keep them up. from the make sure you tell your neighbor don't park your car on the lawn to keep your yard up, to working with each other's neighbors and taking care of each other. But I personally, I think it's economic development. I think it's diversifying our economic base, it's putting people to work and increasing the tax base, and to dedicate and use those dollars for, rebuilding and keeping our inner city strong.
So we're talking a little bit at cross purposes. The fact of higher end housing on the fringes draws middle income and upper middle income people out of areas that are closer to the center of the city and takes them, and it reduces the market value of the real estate, no matter whether people park their cars on the lawn or they keep them pristine. So that's a, I can give you the study. So my question is, given that that's the fact, and that we're in a region here, we're in a housing region, right? So what is your willingness to think about regional planning along the lines of what Portland has done, which has created an amazing economic dynamic within the city, protected property values? I mean, the Pearl District was a slum 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And, so what are your thoughts along the lines of preserving center city real estate values by using ideas from other places such as specifically regional planning?
Yeah, I mean, regional planning is, I can tell you 100% I'm behind that. I mean, you may not have seen my attempt at the Frank Corridor as regional planning, but that's what it was. The joint meeting that I called as board president when Madera and Fresno County came together as boards to talk about regional planning and how we work together. I mean, that was us that did that, and if you remember, it was on the heels of the city of Fresno thinking it was a great strategy to sue each other. So the city was suing the county, the city was suing Madera, and at that point, Madera was ready to sue the city of Fresno on El Paseo development there on Herndon and 99.
Well, wait, I'm sorry. Are you saying that we have regional planning now of
No,
some
no, no.
kind? Okay.
No, what I'm saying,
Okay.
what I'm saying is I have been willing to engage in regional planning. Okay, but to answer your question.
So talk about the path. How do we get there?
How do we get there? Well, I think what I've said the path is just the fact as the chairman of the board of supervisors, I've been willing to have those kind of discussions on a cross-county basis. And it's more than just cross-county, it's also within our jurisdictions. I'll give you one more example, and I'll come back to the mayor, because I think that's where the mayor has an opportunity. When you have one person who controls the resources, $1 billion budget of 3,000 employees, that really is where the buck stops. Okay, it's a lot tougher, different challenge, not saying I don't enjoy it. But when you have 5 supervisors or 7 city council members, herding 3 votes or 4 votes and keeping them together on any one issue, that's a lot of work. But when you're a mayor, it's a different ballgame. So I believe I've demonstrated my willingness to be a part of regional thinking. I can tell you something we're doing at the Council of Governments. That's why I have extended myself beyond being a supervisor, being on those types of boards and commissions that are pressure points that have regional types discussions. And I can tell you at the Council of Governments, in September, we have a proposal right now that's coming from Fresno State. Their Department of Engineering is moving forward on a transportation planning institute where they're asking for $3 million from the Council of Governments to move forward with allowing them to train their students to be regional thinkers on transportation planning. And the trade-off with the 15 cities that are at the table at the call is that the detriment that the small cities have, with the exception of Clovis and the city of Fresno, is they can't afford the cost of transportation planners to do the type of transportation thinking and planning that they need to do. So then they can't apply for the federal and state grants to help them with their transportation efforts. So this group is, hopefully this passes, they're going to get the money, and this Fresno State group will do that planning for those cities. So am I into regional thinking and planning? Yes, and I will as a mayor.
Yeah, you're over time.
I know. But I mean, that's a great question. We could talk 2 hours on that. It's a good question.
We will.
We will.
We will. Okay, so the next is going to be the homeless issues.
All right, an easy question
Henry, please critique the City of Fresno's current policy on the homeless. What are they doing well, and what could they be doing better?
Okay. Let me go back 10, 12 years when you recall when the city and county came together and formed the 10-year homeless plan. Well, at that time, I was the point person on the county board of supervisors, and Mayor Autry was the mayor, and we developed this 10-year plan. Now, I think there was a lot of symbolism in that plan, because the plan was we're going to end homelessness in 10 years. You know, I think we knew then, just like we know today, that will always be an issue in our community and any community. But the question is, can we do better? Now, you know, I know a lot of folks look to the city of Fresno as it being its issue and its issue to fix, because that's where the critical mass is. That's where you find most of the homeless congregated in this county. But when you look at the resource end of it, the city of Fresno is probably one of the smallest financial players in the issue, I believe, of the homeless. But the county of Fresno, you know, we have the lion's share of resources when it comes to the homeless, whether it's the mental health funding, it's our homeless funding, and then there's different silos within that we have categories, our social service monies. I mean, you name it, there's a lot of resources that the county of Fresno allocates into the homeless issue. Now, Housing Authority plays a pretty big role. City of Fresno Housing Authority. Of course, we have this continuum of care that is dealing with the issue, or working with the issue. So what has the city done well? I mean, I think the city has done well in identifying the problem that it has. I mean, I think there's a philosophy that the city of Fresno has adopted. The first homes is what's called First Steps Homes, or first home.
First Steps Homes.
Yeah. Yeah, well, what I didn't realize as we went through the last 10 years in talking about the homeless and what's the greatest way to impact helping the homeless is the different philosophies. There are, I think, two competing philosophies on working with the homeless. One is everybody deserves a home. Everybody should have a home. And I don't think anybody would argue with that. The other side of the coin is there's some homeless advocates that are saying, well, where are the homes? You know, you don't have enough homes, so what's the other side of the spectrum? You know, so there's folks who will say, well, I just use the rescue mission as an example. That's one I was at many years ago, where they would say, well, yes, if they come through our door, they're going to have to either go to the counseling or do some type of treatment or do some kind of work. And so people have a choice. You know, they're well, no, I don't want to do that. And, well, I want a house. Well, that's kind of where we're at, I think. The gap that I believe that we have in continuing to work with the homeless issue, which I think Fresno has as a gap, is we don't have emergency shelters in the city. And I've talked to a lot of folks on each side of that spectrum that get pretty, some will get upset about that concept. But I live in the real world in what I do. And what I know is, and I'll just give you an example of the Santa Clara house that is downtown. You know, that was major funders by the County of Fresno, the Housing Authority, the City of Fresno participated. But you look at what, 63 to 67 units, and it's a $12 million operation. Now, I know it's really hard to pinpoint how many homeless we have, but I've heard numbers ranging from 2,000 to 4,000 in Fresno. There's probably more. So do the math just on that. If you're in that arena of everybody should have a house, we can't afford it. That's the reality. Doesn't mean we shouldn't try, but we don't have the money. The federal government is reducing the resources they are sending into communities to work with the homeless. I can tell you the County of Fresno, the City of Fresno, or the Housing Authority does not have the financial resources to provide that level of housing through its resources. That's just a reality. So the question is, what do we do in the meantime? Well, I think we keep doing what we're doing, because I think people are doing a good job. There's a lot of good people out there on the ground doing good work. But I come back to the gap that we have in this community. We don't have enough emergency housing. You know, when we go out and we find folks that are sleeping behind lawns or sleeping in the park, I mean, where's the human dignity there? You know, where they're leaving themselves out behind buildings or in parks. You know, there has to be something else that we can transition them into, where they're safe at night, they have a place to sleep, there's restroom facilities, they can shower in the morning, and we have our teams out there us doing assessments and seeing, okay, where and how can we transition folks to something when they're ready to move. But right now, in my mind, if I were the mayor tomorrow, it's not acceptable for people to be sleeping behind bonds, in parks. And it's going to be tough. I don't pretend to stand up here and have the answer to that, because it's going to be a very difficult discussion in this community from every corner of it. Because what I have found, and I didn't need to be running for mayor to understand this, because I'm out a lot in this community anyway. But I really believe this issue has hit critical mass. And I say that because on the one hand, I have a proven record through my votes and through my interest in this issue that, I mean, you respect human life, you respect human dignity, you always do the best that you can to help people, okay? And in this case, the homeless, I'm there. But the other side of the coin are all of you and all of the other taxpayers in this community who are saying, and I'm not kidding you, every corner of this city, people say, we don't mind paying our tax dollars. We don't mind helping people. We want to. But the question is, the but is, but how about us? How about my security? How about my safety? How about my neighborhood? How about my park? How about my, grocery store? We have a right to a quality of life. So there it is. I mean, I think that's the discussion that we're having in this community right now. And I think on a go-forward basis, it's going to get bigger. But from my mind as a mayor, I know there's the housing first option, and that's great. We keep that going. I know there's the folks like the rescue mission and folks like that who have criteria to get into their services. But I really believe the gap are homeless shelters, or emergency shelters, rather. We need emergency shelters for folks with that interim gap to help people.
Henry, you mentioned affordable housing and the Santa Clara facility in downtown and how that accommodates so few homeless people compared to how much money we've spent. But there is an issue on affordable housing. What would your administration do to move us in the direction of having enough affordable housing and social services to end homelessness? Because you're going to have to both get affordable housing and social services that people need in order for them to get off the streets and stay off the streets. How are you going to move in that direction?
Well, being a county supervisor, I mean, I go back to a comment I made earlier. The county of Fresno does control or have the lion's share of the social service dollars that are impacting the homeless. And I wish I could tell you that it's a huge pot, but I could tell you it could be 3 times bigger and still probably wouldn't be enough to meet the need. So I just think we continue utilizing the monies that we have, providing the services that we do, and continue in our lobbying efforts in Washington to make sure that they don't reduce those resources, because that debate in DC is always going on, and where can they cut? So I mean, we're always fighting that fight. But one of the challenges that I can tell you have at the county is, I mean, we have a $5 or $7 billion budget this year, okay? I mean, the discretion that we as a board of supervisors have over that pot is probably $500,000, 500 million rather. And the reason for that is because the majority of our money is earmarked to certain programs. So now when you go into the social service, the community health, the mental health silos, I mean, a lot of times our money is earmarked for certain populations, so I think the sad thing that I see is, we all know the rainbow of the homeless community is a pretty broad spectrum. I mean, you have the kids that are aging out of the foster care system, that is a population. You have the homeless veteran, you have the person that's mentally ill, and many times that crosses into many different categories, and the list goes on. But sometimes our funding is earmarked just for certain populations. So then we have to, accept that as a reality. So, I mean, I think we continue doing what we can with the resources we have and partnering, because the county can't do it by itself, nor can the city or the housing authorities. How do we continue to partner the dollars that we have to be effective? Affordable housing, I mean, I think there's no question that under this new plan, there's a lot of discussions about affordable housing and moving forward with the development of more affordable housing. So I think that goes back again to resources, accessing those funds that will allow us to create and build affordable housing in this community. Then I think I think that's just part of the equation. So then the question is building affordable housing, and then the question always is, depending on interest group, is who is the affordable housing for, right? So, I mean, those are all discussions that are going to be on a go-forward basis. And, let me just answer one thing that I missed on the other part of your question. Where has the city of Fresno not done well? Where I think the big mistake that they made was when, even though I understand the pressure they had on the homeless encampments that had grown so big in different parts of our downtown area, I think the way they handled it created a lot of dispersion that's what we're seeing now throughout the city. So I think they could have handled that differently.
So specifically, how would your homeless policy be different from Lee Brand's if you're elected mayor?
You know, I honestly, I don't know what Lee Brands is.
He wants to end homelessness.
Oh, okay, well, then you can do that. And, yeah, it's hard for me to answer that question, I don't know what his plan is. All I can tell you is what I have done, and where I see as the major gap are emergency shelters in this community. I'm not saying that's the answer, I'm not saying that's gonna end homelessness, but what it's going to do is gonna give me one more option that the city doesn't have today. And that is the ability to move people out of the areas that they're in right now, the encampments that they're in now, into something that's safer and more secure for them, that can begin the process of transition to something else. So maybe that's the difference, but again, I don't know what his plan is.
So just so that we're clear, are you arguing for a 24/7 place, a safe and legal place where any homeless person can go to get off the street? Would you push that as a policy so that homeless people aren't wherever they're at living illegally? So there would be facilities there where they could have drinking water, place to go to the bathroom, trash pickup. So there would be enough places for every homeless person to go to in Fresno if you become mayor.
Okay, well, let me qualify your last statement. There's enough places for everybody to go. I don't know how many everybody's there are, but what I do know, like I said, the gap are emergency shelters. And I know the city doesn't have them now, and I know I'm willing as a mayor to create the policies to start building them. And yes, they'll be safe, they'll be secure, they'll have facilities for them to use, they'll be working with this county and the continuum of care that provides those outreach services now. Those folks will be, it's not just for somebody to go stay for the night and move on, which they can if they want, but the point is, there's going to be somebody there who's going to be trying to impact them in some way to help them make a choice in a different direction, whether that's into mental health services, into maybe some other transitional housing, etc. I think that's the gap that we don't have. Those folks are out there right now for a variety of reasons. And some of them, you know, they'll maybe not know that the services are available to them. But what I want to do is be in a position to say, you don't have to sleep behind bonds tonight. You can come here and we'll give you a ride to the shelter and we'll get you there. Just as during the daytime, like Albuquerque, we're going to be letting folks know if you really do want to work for food, we got to work for you. You know, the city of Fresno will bring you on board. We will pay you for the day. And within that continuum, we're going to feed them, but also give them those, it's all continuum of care. You know, it's, hey, how do we transition you to something else? So it's going to be a big lift, but I think that's the gap that we have in the city right now that I'm willing to tackle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then we'll move on to police accountability.
Okay.
Which is easier, doesn't it?
Better take a seat.
Well, the question for the Southwest and other areas as well, we have a deep lack of trust with accountability of our chief Dyer right now. We see that what goes on as of today, and one of the things he said at the Healing Community event that happened at Fresno High, he was stating that on the video that he said 53% of the blacks do more shooting in the community, so they use more guns than anyone. So that's one of the concerns that we have as well. Not promoting him to be the chief.
Well, he was already promoted. He's already there. Right?
Say that again?
He's promoted. He's already there.
Well, yeah, that's something we want to get rid of him. Now, I said, now we want to get
So how many here share that opinion? 60-40.
I would like to dovetail, not to interrupt you whatsoever, I really apologize, but we just, our small coalition of groups that sent a survey out for just general public members, activists that have joined recently in the political movement, identified two issues. It wasn't property values and it wasn't the homeless. citizens were worried about social justice and precisely that individual. And the water
And water.
issues with contaminations in the water.
So, sir, is there more to your question, or is your question basically Chief Dyer?
Pretty much, because, I mean, from what we see, I mean, just what happened also a few days ago at Hoover High School.
Yes.
I mean, instead of, you know, I see why you don't use guns probably as much like you say you don't, because I see your officers out there tackle them and arrest them, put them in, you know, chokeholds and things, you know, so we see a lot of that. So these are things that we disapprove of what he do, how he command his police force. So basically,
Yeah.
There's a lack of trust.
lack of trust and.
Yeah. I'm going to come at that answer from this direction. One thing I can tell you I have learned in my 23, 24 years of public office, and a lot of you know I'm a fighter. You know, when I get on an issue, you're going to see me moving pretty strongly on it if I really believe in something. There's no question in this city, just like a lot of cities across this country, there's a lot of tension between community and police relations. I get that. This is where, as a mayor, I would come from on this issue. And I think we really do have a golden opportunity. Chief Dyer has announced that he's going to be leaving the city in the next year or two. So, as a mayor, what I see as the opportunity for the next mayor is hiring the next police chief. So if you ask me where I'm going to put my energy, it's going to be in selecting the next police chief. Now, you know, this came to me when we were at the forum at the church in Malaga. Because I tell you what, we went to 5 or 6 or 7 debates last semester, and I looked at my debate calendar, I'll probably have 10 or 12 between now and election day. Everybody wants to, and that's great. But what came to me that day, I mean, as you can imagine, we get pretty tiring, you know, going to debates, you know, like, oh wow, it's a lot of work. But they're important, they need to be said. But what came to me is, because every forum we went to, there was some variation of this question. What are you going to do to improve community police relations? But one thing I know, and the opportunity I would have as a mayor, is to pick that next police chief, number one. Number two is the question in my head was, how will I do that? What's going to be my process? Well, I think there's traditional processes of recruitment, but one thing I started messaging that day, and I've said it in every forum, and I'll say it here today, whoever my final candidates are for chief of police are going to be coming to you. They're going to be coming to that church, and every group. I've been to the Muslim community, the Sikh community. And let me tell you, everybody has the same concern, but they come out from a different perspective. You know, when I was at the Islamic Center, you know, a lady, and I apologize, is it a burqa called when they're dressed, you know, with their covers?
Yeah.
You know, the question that she asked was, you know, she goes, I'm a doctor. And the person next to her was a doctor. But one was dressed traditional, and she was dressed the way she was dressed. Well, not traditional, she was dressed just like mainstream. So they were like, she goes, we're the same. She goes, but we're treated differently when we're in public. She goes, and her question was really broader than just the police. It was just more of, how do we start engaging as a community and recognizing and appreciating and respecting our different cultures and understanding them? And so, you know, I left with that bullet in my head too, about our discussion has to be broader than that. It's not just the police chief and are they going to have the right policing thinking strategies, community-based policing, but really the responsibility of us as a community, how do we all embrace each other? You know, how do we break down these barriers amongst ourselves? And I think that's just simple communications. I'm sorry, yes?
When you start recruiting, do you plan to recruit from within the existing police? And if you do, are you going to look at their educational background in terms of philosophy?
Yeah.
Have they taken philosophy classes?
Yeah, I'm gonna let you ask the question, but then we're gonna ask people to write down.
I know, I'm
No,
sorry, but I'm
it would be a nationwide recruitment. You know, I think we have to cast a net around this country to bring a good cross-section of candidate pool. But in my head, the community is going to have to be a part of the decision. And what I can tell you, whether it's this forum here, if I had my 4 candidates here today, I guarantee you I'd be sitting in the back of the room. Because my job as the mayor would be to see how that person is interacting with the community and answering their questions and explaining why they should be the chief. I think that's important. So when you talk about, I think, rebuilding trust into a community, that's how you do it, and I think that's the opportunity that we have. Now let me tell you something, another thing too. As a mayor, I believe a mayor is the ultimate boss. The buck stops there. And I think that's been a problem in this city for the past 20 years or so. I think there's been a lot of, maybe, I think not a complete or total understanding of the role of a mayor in connecting public policy to implementation. I think that's been a gap. Okay, though I think the one strength that I have with all the political experiences and professional experience that I have is I know how to connect public policy to implementation. So having said that, when I look back now at a police department, the ultimate boss is the mayor. And the mayor oversees every department head, from the police chief, fire chief, on down to every other. And that's where the accountability is held. And I think that's missing right now at City Hall. I think there's a disconnect between the top echelon of City Hall and its department heads that it oversees. And if you think I'm wrong, take a look at the water issue in Northeast Fresno. You know, the city of Fresno right now is acting like that water department was just something that just came online a year or two ago, and they don't know what happened there. How could you not? But I don't want to go too far into that, other than just say that to me is a sign of somebody not paying attention at the top. And I think that's what a mayor does.
On that point, then, when a new chief takes over, would you be looking for a chief who is going to be supportive of a truly independent review mechanism that has enforcement and consequential power over the police department and its conduct? Because presently, the Office of Independent Review is pretty toothless. We have an independent auditor, Mr. Rasmussen, and his investigator, neither of whom live in California, let alone Fresno. Both of whom are FBI agents, and the FBI agents have never, as many police shootings as the FBI have had in their history, they've never found an unjustified shooting among the FBI. So these are the guys that are reviewing. Plus, they don't do an independent investigation of anything. They take the internal affairs reports that are given by the police department, and then they study them and critique them, and that's basically the scope of their review. So, are you satisfied with that structure going forward?
Okay, and I hate to answer the question with the question because it's your forum, but who would you see in the model that you want as an auditor? Who would you see as the auditor? What background? What type of person?
I would want to see someone who actually crosses the line, and there are people like this in litigation that come across them, who can straddle the line between police experience and civil rights. People who know what the public, who advocate public safety, and also advocate for the civil rights of the people who are in contact with the police. Somebody who has both of those capabilities and both of those passions.
He talking about himself.
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Fill out your application. I'll talk to you in January. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
Perfect, there he is.
Well, I mean, let me come this way at this question. Go back to the reason this community felt that it needed a police auditor. Okay? It felt that it was not having the proper response from its city. They didn't feel proper oversight, so it was like, we need an independent review. And I think what we have seen the original concept, which I believe was your original concept, give us something that has authority to oversee something, it ended up being what it is today, right? A hybrid of what the original intent was, and we have someone from out of state, which I agree with you. That's one of the first things I would do is I would thank the person for his work and send him on his way. You don't need somebody from Utah to be a police officer in the city of Fresno. You know, it would be somebody more local, or at least has an understanding of our local flavor. If you're asking me if I would change or expand the police auditor from what it is today on day one, the answer is no. I would not. And I'll tell you why. And the answer I gave you before is accountability. And I really believe that if you don't have a mayor that is strong enough to stand up to whatever issue, whatever city department that you have, regardless of how difficult it would be, then you have the wrong mayor. I really believe in that. So if you're asking me who the ultimate police auditor is, it's the mayor. And if I can just give you one experience that I had, and I can't give you too much detail, only because a lot of it was in closed session, but I think a lot of you know, I used to be a police reserve officer in the city of Fresno. I wore the uniform for 15 years. I won't say I worked every day because we did it. We worked a lot of weekends, a lot of different patrol and undercover details. But what I know is this, is a time, when I was in that unit, it was back in the late 80s, early 90s, crime was pretty tough in this city. There was a lot of things going on. But what I do know at the time, the city of Fresno had a unit, if you recall, it was called Violent Crime Suppression Unit. Do you remember that unit? Yeah. And at some point, that unit got a little bit beyond its scope. And as an officer, I saw that. 1997, I became a councilman. And what I knew as a councilman is that that could not be anymore. So as a councilman wearing a policy hat, I engaged in changing that structure. And it took me a while to get the council to agree with me, but what I can tell you, that unit did go away. So I just give you that as an example to say, some of these things are not easy to do. Sometimes I understand what it is to take on some very tough dynamics and tough forces. But I can stand here and tell you, I was in a situation where I saw something, I knew it wasn't right, and when I came into a position to do something about it, I did. So I'm very passionate and strong about saying that when I hear things like police auditor, or I mean, if they wanted a water auditor, you know, after what's happened in Northeast Fresno, I'd probably say no to that. I'd say if you can't rely on your mayor, and that mayor building a team that's going to be held accountable for whether it's water or police or the fire or code enforcement or dealing with slumlords, then you got the wrong mayor. That's all I'm going to tell you. And until I prove you wrong, I'm asking you to trust me. So, I mean, I answered your question. I don't probably want the answer you wanted, but that's it.
Do you have any ideas for, following that point of the mayor being accountable, to increase the structure for transparency in an agency that all law enforcement agencies are highly secretive and frankly engage in subterfuge and faults? Look at Chicago.
Yeah, that's a great question. Let me tell you I'll answer that two ways. One,
30 seconds.
no, you gotta give me more time because this is too important. Please, I know it's 2 times that, but this is an important question. I was in LA, and the UC Irvine with the LA PD, LA Sheriff, San Bernardino, and the Secret Service was there. And the purpose of this was those law enforcement agencies have asked UCI to create a think tank to, like we do in social services, mental health services, where there's a lot of accountability to creating the criteria by which then they will evaluate themselves on the effectiveness of their social services or mental health programs. This team is wanting to develop the same type of thought process for law enforcement. So they're recognizing they have an issue. They're recognizing that they have to increase the education, the cultural education, the police tactic training for police officers, and they're stepping right into it. Why was I there? Because, you know, folks in the state watch what's going on, and I've done a good job of networking around the state as a county supervisor, and they invited me as a potential mayor to say, we want to tell you what we're doing, we want the city of Fresno to be a part of this, and we want to change the structure and dynamic of how we work as a community, how we train our officers, how we educate them, and how they use tactics in the field. And I told them I'm in. The other thing I'll say just real quickly is last night I was at, there was All-American Car Wash. They had a forum, you know, a public safety forum, you know, supporting the police officers, and I went. And what was interesting, one of the most powerful things I think I've heard is the chief of police of Selma. And what he said, which is I know because I went to a police academy and I was trained that way. One of the things that is embedded in our culture and our training is, whatever happens, number one goal is to go home at night to your family. I mean, that's in your academies. But what he said was powerful, because what he said is that's important. Yes, absolutely, it's important for every officer to go home every night to the family. He goes, but you know what? He goes, it's also important for everyone to go home that night.
Thank you.
And you know, I mean, it kind of gives you the chills, but I think about it, and he's right. He's right. So then, in my head, if you're moving in philosophy now, and that to me is a powerful paradigm shift. Now, how do you retool your training in your academies to start that concept? Everybody goes home. That changes the whole way the way you think. So I'm just telling you, there's a lot of opportunity we have as a community going forward. I really believe that. If I didn't, I wouldn't be standing here, I'd be somewhere else. I really believe we can do great things in this city. But we're going to have to do it together. And it's going to be some tough decisions and a lot of people working together to make things happen.
Okay, we're going to move on to the tenants' rights and the code enforcement issue.
All right. So the first question, just simple, maybe a couple minutes to it, is some politicians in Fresno believe habitability issues are tenants' faults. Why do you think, and can you comment to why, blaming the victim is not the answer to this problem?
Well, I mean, yeah, that's an easy one. I mean, yeah, you just don't. You know, I mean, everybody has a different living condition, but to me, the issue is, I mean, let's keep the issue where it's at. We have slums in this city, and we have to deal with it, because in my mind, that's a quality of life issue for the person living in in that slum, and it's a quality of life issue for those people living around that slum. You know, we talked earlier about, you know, how do we maintain the integrity and quality of life of our neighborhoods, you know, we develop up north. Well, yeah, I understand there's challenges and discussions around that. But the real thing in my head, too, is we have to make sure that we sustain and maintain the neighborhoods that we have now. And there's some things we can do that don't require more government money from a standpoint of, well, whatever, more government money. What it stands in my head is holding people accountable for the properties that they have. And if they can't, then we deal with them. But you don't blame the tenant. I mean, are there people who are tenants that have issues? Yeah, I'm sure there are. But that's between that tenant and that landlord, where they deal with each other. But that's not a city issue.
All right, thank you. So in the last year, we've had several life-threatening events that have taken place in the city of Fresno. We had no gas or heat at the Somerset Apartments last winter, which resulted in an elderly man dying, the recent fire on Belmont. These events happen when the city is failing to enforce habitability statewide laws. How would you support an interior routine inspection program in the city of Fresno for all rental units?
Okay, let me answer it this way. When I was on the city council, this was a major issue for us then too. And part of our solution at that time is we doubled up our code enforcement unit. So we made our commitment through a budget that prioritized code enforcement and dealing with these issues as a priority. As you know, over time that went down, and they probably cut their code enforcement department in half. So we shouldn't be surprised if Somerset and other things like that have happened. This is the way I see the issue if I were the mayor. And I've networked with the No Slum Work folks. Sergio's not here, is he?
No, but he's watching on Facebook.
Okay. You know, I remember a few years back being at a press conference where there were a lot of advocates who were, you know, I can't remember the name of the group, there were lawyers and different groups, you know, folks who were dealing with the issue of tenant rights and tenant issues, and I was there. No question, it's an issue that I'm aware of, an issue that I support. Now, as a mayor, how would I tackle the issue? You know, now, working with Sergio, we've identified what we call the dirty dozen. You know, we're not rolling out the list. We're just trying to create a visual for this community. But there are some bad actors in this town, you know, and I'm calling them the dirty dozen. And if you follow me on Facebook, you'll know that for the past 4 months, I've been messaging that. We're going to deal with the dirty dozen on January 1st. Their party is over, and it's going to be. And what I'm going to be looking at are interior inspections for those dirty dozen. And I'm going to be looking at when they rent, before they can rent a unit, they're going to have to pass that inspection before they can rent that to somebody. And I'm going to use the housing authority law. You know, the way they inspect your Section 8. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. All the mechanisms are there. That's why I'm a little surprised at the city task force that's been going on for the last 6, 7, 8 months. I don't know what the heck they're doing, to tell you the truth. You know, other than knowing now that the apartment association is through that task force, they're slowing it all down.
Yeah.
So it's not, that's my opinion, but probably not much will happen between now and the end of the year, but so be it.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah.
So just to be clear, you're saying you wouldn't do routine inspections for all units, but just on certain ones that you've identified who have systematic problems?
Yeah, I was going to just get to that right now in my answer.
Okay, and then also, so there's several big cities in California that have proven routine inspections work to improve habitability and quality of life in the city. Specifically, would you create a program where you would crack down on code violations and make slumlords who are breaking the law pay fines? Because the city has been very lenient on this. When they have been fined, they go to court and they just say, you don't need to pay that.
Yeah,
and this would help pay for the program.
No question that part of my thinking and process would be at the minimum a doubling of code enforcement teams. And of course, a lot of that focus going into the slumlords. Going back to my city council days, our city attorney had to pull me back because I only did it 1 month. I had a slumlord of the month proclamation. And we awarded it, and our city attorney told me, well, you probably get sued, so we didn't do it. But no, and I don't know if it's legal in the orders here, but I mean, I think we should make these folks live in their units week as part of the challenge, so they can see what it's like. I don't know if that's legal, but I just illustrate to show you how much I know this is a quality of life issue that has to be dealt with in this community. Now, the answer to your question, am I going to have a citywide inspection program? The answer is no, because the reality is this: you only have so many resources. And what I am going to do is focus on those that are the worst offenders of this community. And the way I see and understand human nature is when people think you're serious and know you're serious and you act, it's going to spread that way. Yeah. The problem in this city right now are slumlords. They don't take the city serious. No problem. Yeah, nobody's watching them. Nobody's inspecting them. Nobody's fining them. And when they are fined, they're not making them pay their fines. So, I mean, what's the end result? Business as usual. Okay? I think when we focus on our dirty dozen, I think when we start really holding people accountable and they start hurting their pocketbook, things are going to change. I mean, I understand they're business people, and I don't have a problem with them having their rental units in this city. I get that. But be responsible to your tenant and to your neighbors.
My next question. So having laws and policies to protect tenants doesn't do much if we have no ability to enforce it. You mentioned earlier, in 2009, we had 50 code enforcement officers. The department, as of 2015, has been cut back over 50% to 23 code enforcement officers. Yeah. So in your opinion, how many code enforcement officers would be the right amount to enforce habitable housing for 250,000 tenants that live in the city of Fresno? And would you make it a priority to fund our code enforcement department and hire more code enforcement officers?
Yeah. Well, like I said, when I was on the council, I have proof of my commitment to code enforcement, and we did double our code enforcement officers. Would I increase our officers? Absolutely. I think a minute ago I said I would double them. Maybe we need more. I don't know, but I think the message I'm trying to send you is that it's an issue that's going to be funded. How many I actually need? I think it's going to depend on what our target is. I mean, I work off of plans. I work off of a strategy. So, if I bring my team on and we say, okay, of our dirty dozen or whatever we want to frame it as, if we identify there's 1,000 or 2,000 units, we're going to wrap ourselves up. Let me see that as a number. Then you work your way back from that. What do I need to impact that number? In what time frame I want to do it. I mean, that's how I work. Now, whether that's double code enforcement, triple, or maybe I just needed to add a third one, I don't know. But I think my commitment to you, I hope it's clear, is that I am going to deal with the issue. I am going to have more code enforcement officers, and I am going to hold people accountable.
All right, great. So our final question on this topic is, as you said, you are going to identify the worst slumlords in the city of Fresno, and so who are these slumlords? And what tactics are you going to use to go after them?
Well, we know who they are. But I think that's why I'm framing it as a dirty dozen. Because I think once you start naming who they are, then that becomes a different argument. It shapes a different discussion or argument or loses focus. I'm not going to lose focus on the issue. The issue is we have bad actors in this town who have slums, who house people in deplorable conditions and ruin neighborhoods, and we're going after them. We're going to hold them accountable.
Would you be willing to use the city attorney because we have asked before if the city attorney would prosecute slumlords that are doing code violations, and they never did. So we had to bring in lawyers from out of town to do
Yeah.
this. So would that be something that you would be willing to do?
Well, we would do one of two things. First, you know, I'm a little intrigued by this internal hearing officer that they have. And I'm not comfortable with that process. It just seems like more bureaucracy to me. So I don't know if we need that as a part of the steps in litigation. But to answer your question directly, I would do one of two things. I would either staff the city attorney so that they could be very aggressive in prosecuting once they're cited. And if they don't want to do it, because understand the city attorney and the city clerk report to the city council, not to the mayor. Okay, so if somehow there was a disconnect there, which I hope there wouldn't be, but if there was, then under the mayor's office, I would bring the right person or personnel in to do those prosecutions. I mean, if you're gonna deal with slumlords, you have to make the commitment to it and you have to go. Because the minute you say stop, then they're gonna pull back and say, you're not serious. And I'm gonna be serious about this issue.
Just a hard question, but where are you going to, you're going to deal with the slumlords, but the slumlords are not the owners of the property. So why you first have to go after the owners of the property that they are managing in most cases?
Well, that's a slumlord. The slumlord, in my head, the slumlord's the owner.
They're usually up
You're not going after the property manager, you're going after the main
The
person.
owner, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's a law that we passed when I was on the city council where we held property owners accountable for the behavior of their tenants. And it's a little bit different than what we're talking about right now. But let me tell you how effective that tool is too, because there's a lot of single family, you know, rentals out there where the out-of-town landlord will rent to somebody and then all of a sudden there's drugs or there's a lot of parties and the neighborhood is just being held hostage, right? Well, you know, I'll tell you what, when we call a landlord in wherever and just say, you know, there were somebody selling drugs on your property, there's been 3 police calls, the value of those calls are $3,000 and now you have a $3,000 bill. They act. So I think we need to look at our ordinance and see where do we need to tweak them so that we hold the property owners accountable for their slum, but then find the mechanisms to attach to their property to charge them for the cost of whatever it is we're doing to make them comply. They have to be responsible to the city and to their people. It's that simple.
Okay, now we're going to move over to questions from the audience, and Howard has picked out.
We have about 24 questions in 4 hours. So some of which were written before you spoke. So I think some of them have been touched on and or answered. I've tried to cull what I thought was the priorities from some of the questions that were provided. How would you involve the community in vetting the next chief of police?
Okay, I answer that. Anybody not clear on that?
Sorry, I was reading questions. Do you support annexing county islands like Bayford, Dixon, and Malaga? If yes, how would you go about doing it?
No.
Fulton
And let me just answer what in more part. If you go back to my city council days, and even as a board of supervisor, you'll find me supporting every vote that we had to consolidate public safety services in those areas. And here we sit today, 20 years later, and we're nowhere closer to doing that than we were then. And the reason for that is this. One is there are people that live in those areas, like I use Big Garden as an example. I mean, they'll fight to the end to stay a county island. So you have to respect the will of the voters. But the other two, when you come to public safety, is Sheriff Benz is the top cop in this town, and she's elected. And there's no consolidation of public safety services in any way, shape, or form that happen unless she says okay. So I've had that experience over the last 12, 15 years. They're not interested in doing that, so I'm not going to waste political capital in that effort. But if you're asking me how do we work together, I can tell you I've already had discussions with Sheriff Mims about how we've taken aside consolidation or who's in charge of who, is how do we work together with the 300 or 400 sheriffs she has and the 700 or 800 police officers that the Fresno PD has, how do we work better to police our metropolitan area to keep people safe? So we're having those discussions already.
Regarding the Fulton Mall, what will you do to ensure that the artwork that has been removed will in fact be returned to that area? And second part, any plan to find replacement urban parks or spaces in downtown area?
Yeah. I'm glad you guys didn't ask the Fulton Mall question. But, the art has to stay there. I mean, we're going to have to find different places for it to go. I thought that was part of the plan. Is that not part of the plan? Yeah.
It is part of the plan, whether it gets followed through
Oh,
on,
no,
I guess,
follow
is
through.
concerned.
Because he'll probably be helping me do it, right? Yeah, no, that art's gonna stay. Yeah, it's gonna create a green space issue for us down there. But, yeah, I don't have an answer for that one other than to say that I know green space is an issue in our inner city.
Okay, how long should the city allow vacant homes to remain boarded up or not rented or sold? And what about the city partnering with others to buy such homes to house the homeless under supervisions? They have programs like that in LA and some other places, whether it's with nonprofits or working with the county's social workers or what.
Well, we're on private properties, we have to be careful there. I mean, certainly if someone has a vacant home in a neighborhood, they have a responsibility for that neighborhood. So in my head, there may not be somebody living inside of it, but I think the owner has a responsibility to make the house look like it's living. So keep your yard up, keep the facade, keep it looking good. As far as going forward and the city and or county or whoever buying it, I mean, that's always an option on the table. I don't think the city of Fresno does that now, I don't think. Or the housing authority or anything, I don't know.
Toxic polluters in residential neighborhoods are hurting people's property values and the health of children. What would you do to reduce the concentration of toxic pollution, especially in West Fresno and Cowla? I think West Fresno has the highest concentration in the state.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of, I know, concern in West Fresno, and I think there's been a lot of work by activists that are involved in that issue. Yeah, when I think of that, I think of that rendering plan. To me, that's like the flag of that issue, even though I know there are others. I think the city, I know there's been some discussion of moving the rendering plant to the wastewater treatment plant. As far as relocating it, and they've been working to get the funding to make that happen. I guess what I would tell you is I don't know where that process is at, but I think that's a good solution. I think you need to move that rendering plant out of that neighborhood and move it, and I don't have a problem with keeping the momentum going to move it onto the city property.
Good.
Concerning development of Frine area, you have taken major contributions from developers that want to build in Frine. How can you be independent of these developers? How could you protect the last natural scenic resource left in the city, the San Joaquin River?
Okay. Well, I would go back to my previous answer. I mean, take a drive up there right now. Take a look at what CMEX and all those folks have done to the river bottom on San Joaquin. Okay, that's bad planning. Somebody didn't do planning a long time ago. Go up and look at the housing developments that are going up there right now. Okay? And I go back to why I initiated the study that I did. Is someday we're going to wake up and say, what happened in this Frine corridor? And I think it's a result of bad planning right now. So I'm not naive to say that as a city I'm going to stop it or close it and stop it. It's going to develop in some way, shape, or form. I think we have to take responsibility for being a part of how it develops and where it doesn't develop. And I think whatever's left of that river bottom, we absolutely have to protect. We have to put I know there's a general plan umbrella over it now, but we have to, whatever it is we can put on top of that to make it very clear we don't develop that river bottom. I think when we passed that and I think there was a tactical error that our board made when some board members said, well, okay, if we're going to do this study, the developer's going to pay for it. Trust me, that wasn't the plan. The developers didn't want to pay for it, which is why, if you recall, it probably took 2.5 years before the study even started, because the developers had no interest in paying for it. So, I mean, I think we ended up with a study that was flawed because in the end, we couldn't get beyond who paid for it. So, as we sit today, Frine is still developing. And like I said, as a mayor, I'm not going to be asking anybody to say, hey, move my sphere of influence to the base of Frine. You're not going to hear me as a mayor saying that. But it's not to say that it's not going to happen.
Regarding Northeast Fresno, the lead and water levels, there's like over 3,000 homes in Northeast Fresno may have levels of lead in excess of EPA threshold in the water. We don't know how many more might be affected. Any plan to advise parents in Northeast Fresno with children who live in or visit their homes must not use their tap water for drinking or cooking? What's the answer to solving the problem? 25 words or less.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing, as I started messaging on this issue, obviously as part of the mayor's race, I engaged our county health officer a few months back, and so they did their assessment. They're reviewing what the city is doing, so they're doing their assessment. But at the meeting that they had the other night, over 600 people from Northeast Fresno sitting in the room, well, the city's trying to create the narrative that, hey, we just found out about this a few months ago, we're doing our best, which is kind of silly. But the fact of the matter is this, when they're trying to create that narrative and saying your water's okay, our county health officer stood up and say, if there are any pregnant women or children under 6 living in this service area, don't drink the water. You could have heard a pin drop in that room. So there's no question it's an issue. So I think the city's moving forward right now. They have the right guy in Tommy Escueda and finding the right water mix. When you mix surface water and groundwater, you get a lot of corrosiveness. So I think they're working through the physics or the chemistry to fix that water balance. But the issue right now are a lot of homes with a lot of corroded pipes, and that I think the next mayor's going to have to deal with is somebody got to pay. The last thing I'll just say is what the next mayor has to deal with is there's a Southeast Fresno surface water treatment plant going online. And personally, I don't have the confidence right now that the city can move forward in the design and development of that plant. But if they couldn't figure that one out with 20-year-old homes, what are you going to do to 70-year-old pipelines in Southeast Fresno? Yes.
I just have a quick 3 statistics that came out of Wednesday night. The testing that was done in the homes in Northeast Fresno, 24% of the homes have unsafe levels of lead in the water. 60% of the homes have lead in the water, and 16% of the homes have no lead in the water. So the vast majority, 84% of the homes have lead in the water, and we have to assume for the moment that that includes all homes in Northeast Fresno. So we just want to underline the fact that no pregnant woman and no child should be consuming the water, drinking the water itself, or be consuming any foods that are cooked in that water.
Yeah, and not to mention, just when you think about it, it's Northeast Fresno. And now to sell a home there, you're putting disclaimers, so you know, those disclaimers you have to do legally about issue. I mean, that's incredible in the city of Fresno 2016, but we are where we are.
Okay, so we got one more question to be done by 5.
According to the questionnaire, we have $200+ million at the state level from a parks bond, and none of that is coming to Fresno. How would you fight to bring those dollars to Fresno, and where would you prioritize investing for new parks?
Yeah, I think part of my strength on a go-forward basis is just the fact that I've spent a lot of time as a supervisor, not just doing my supervisor work in Fresno County, but I've involved myself in a lot of things on a state and regional basis. I sit on a lot of boards. And the only reason I say that is just to say that I have a lot of connections and relationships that have been built in this state. I'm going to be announcing soon, I'll probably just announce it here, I received the endorsement of the Speaker of the State Assembly for my mayor's race. So I think that's just to illustrate that we have the type of, we have the opportunities to reach into Sacramento, to access the funds that this community should have. So we're going to fight hard for them. Where would I use those funds? There's no question. I mean, we need more parks in our inner cities. It's Central Fresno, Southeast, Southwest Fresno, and that's where we're going to prioritize that money.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I know you all want to walk a precinct between now and November. So Alicia and Alicia have a Santa Fe.
So I'm going to give Henry 3 minutes wrap up. If it's pitching and walking, that's great.
Thank you, Pam, first, and everybody. Thank you for taking your time to come out here and ask me the questions that were important to you and important to this city, and you for being here. I mean, it's Saturday. You probably, 100 places you'd probably rather be, right? But I mean, the fact that you're here, it says that you care about the city like I do. You know, when Henry and I talked a lot about this race last year, and I was trying to make up my mind of what I wanted to do. What I did know at some point last year is that I've been blessed in my life from a lot of different perspectives. You know, from my professional career to my family to my political career. And what I knew and I had come to peace on was that I was done being a county supervisor. I was proud of the work that I had done. I knew I could do more. But I'm not a young man, I'm not an old man, I'm 64 years old. So, you know, at some point we start looking forward of what do we want to do, you know, the rest of our lives. And when I started thinking more about the mayor's race and seeing what's going on in the city, there's a lot of good in the city, a lot of great people in the city, a lot of good things. But there's a lot of things that we need to do to push us over to the next level. So when I see us as the 5th largest city in the state of California, when I see back when I was on the council, we were an all-America city, I think there's a lot of opportunity. You know, I have kids, I have grandkids, you all have kids, grandkids, and we owe them the future that our parents and grandparents gave us. And I believe I have the skill set to push this city forward to the next level. It's going to be some tough decision making. If the people decide I'm the guy for the job, it's my last stop. You're not going to see me running for Congress or anything else. If God puts me in this seat, and I'm 2 or 3 years old in 8 years, not be running for anything other than maybe the rest of them, you know. But I guess what I'm telling you is I'm willing to do it, but working with you, because a city and a mayor can't do it by themselves, even though we have 3,000 employees. It's not the way it is, you know. That's just part of the team. The real team is you and your neighbors and everybody else. We have to do it together. And if we can't figure that one out together, then I don't know. It'll be a tough road to hoe. But I think we can do it. And I'm ready. So thank you.